All of you are able to see your marks. If anybody you are not able to see the answer script or marks, just message me or mail it to me. I will look into that aspect. Okay. So as mentioned, please be prepared from December 1st onwards. You will be having the live quizzes. Okay. During the session itself. Okay. Let's start the derivation of Compton effect, Compton shift equation. So in the last class, we saw what is Compton effect. It is a case where you will see that when a beam of photon, when a photon strikes an electron which is at rest, you will see that the scattered photon loses energy and undergoes a change in wavelength of lambda dash, and the electron will move at an angle phi, and theta is the scattered photon angle. So this above said process happens when short wavelength radiation such as X-rays or gamma rays photons incident on, particularly with short wavelength radiation. So here we treat this process as collision between the two particles. We already seen in the experiment. The experimental observations can be explained only if you treat this as a particle-particle interaction. That is collision between the two particles. That is the two particles. Excuse me, I am mentioning here is the photon and the electron. So these are the two particles. So this effect can be Compton effect can be explained only if you treat the two particles as two photons and electrons as a particle. Then only you'll be able to explain this effect. You will not be able to explain this effect using the wave nature. So here you treat photon as a particle which has having an energy of E is equal to hf for hc by lambda naught, and it has a rest, zero rest energy. So when the photon collides with the electron which is at rest, it is an elastic scattering. So in the sense, this is a case where the momentum and energy in the system is conserved. And if let us consider lambda naught, B lambda naught, P naught, and E naught. Let these three be the wavelength, momentum, and the energy of the incident photon. And let lambda dash, P dash, E dash, let this be the wavelength, momentum, and energy of the scattered photon. We all know that after the collision between the two particles, that is the photon and the electron, the photon undergoes a change in the energy. In fact, it loses the energy because it transfers some amount of energy to the electron, and the electron will be moving at a particular angle called phi. Then whatever the energy will appear over here and will move in some other direction depending upon the angle theta, and obviously the wavelength of this scattered photon will be larger than compared to that of the incident photon. Basically we know that if energy is less, obviously the wavelength will be larger. So using the principles of conservation of energy and momentum to start with, we'll derive the equation for Compton shift. So as I mentioned in the last class, so first we'll start with conservation of energy. That is incoming energy of the photon is E naught. That is transferred to the transferred in two parts. That is kinetic energy of the electron and remaining as a scattered energy of the photon. So whatever the photon, the remaining energy will appear as E dash. Now we'll write E is equal to E dash plus E minus mc square. So by introducing the relativistic expression for energy of Ke, we can write that as EE minus mc square. So we'll rewrite this above equation as E naught minus E dash plus mc square is equal to EE, and we'll square this equation. That's what we have seen in the previous class. So you get something called this term, and this term gets cancelled up, and you need to look for the momentum of the electron. So which we can build it up. So these two terms marked in red get cancelled, and we need to know the term PE, that the momentum of the electron. So in order to determine the momentum of the electron, we'll introduce the conservation of momentum principle. So by conservation of momentum, we can write the equations as x component as P naught is equal to P dash cos theta and PE cos phi. Suppose if you resolve these two resolving into the vectors, you have this is the x component and this is with the y component. Sorry, this is the y component and this will be the x component. And similarly for the scattered photon, so this will be the y component, this will be the x component. So for x component, we can write, so you have a photon having momentum along the x direction, it will go here, and then this component will be PE cos phi. So that is what is written here, and this component, this term will be P dash cos theta. So these are the x component. Now coming to the y component. So y component across 0, you know that the photon is coming in the x direction, so it is y is 0, component is 0 here, and this component is PE. This is the momentum of the electron. So this is PE sin phi. So this is PE sin phi, and this component is P dash sin theta. If you see here, the negative sign arises because you can see this y components of the momentum and the y component of the scattered photon is in the opposite direction. That is why the negative sign arises here. So this is the conservation of momentum along that. That is, we can writing it as a x component and y component. So that's what we have did in the previous class. And to get PE, so add and square these two equations. So if you do this, observe the derivation carefully. Later on, you can look into that. So if you add and square these two equations, so you will get P naught difference P dash is equal to cos theta. So just rearrange the term and before squaring and adding it. So what you get is PE, that is the momentum of the scattered electron, is equal to P naught squared minus 2 P naught P dash cos theta plus P dash square. So what you do is you need to substitute this in this equation. So and anyway, this term gets cancelled. So now we are left with this equation. So now this equation becomes, so what you have done is we have substituted this PE value, that is momentum of the electron, has been substituted, and you have the equation over here. This is the equation now you are having. So this equation needs to be reduced in order to get the Compton shift equation. Let us see one by one, step by step. So now you have this equation. So take this equation, we can write E naught as Hc by lambda naught, Hc by lambda dash, and similarly the component of E naught can be written over in the form of Hc by lambda, and we can write P as H by lambda, that is P naught means H by lambda naught, H is a constant, that's why. So similarly P dash means we can write H by lambda dash. So it is C square here. For the convenience, what we have done here is we have taken it as taken inside. So in we written as C into C. That's again C square itself. We just put it in the form. In order to put it in the form of H by lambda naught, we have put it in C into C. So now if you see here, now expand the first term in the left hand side. This term once you left expand, what you have is this. This is your left hand side and this is your right hand side of this equation. And now if you want to find out the Compton shift equation, you have to observe for the common terms. So if you see the common terms, the one which is marked in red gets cancelled, and similarly the green one will also get cancelled, the left side and right side. So these are the common terms. The one is these are the common. So this term will get cancelled with this term. And similarly, I think this term will get cancelled with the term on the left side. So what is common here is you have two HC. So though it has a common of 2hc square, 2hc square, but this term doesn't have hc square, so we'll take 2hc as a common term. That is 2hc. From these three terms, we'll rewrite the equation. You have three terms left. That is one on the left side and one on the right side and two on the left side. So using this, we can write this as lambda dash naught difference lambda naught into mc square. So that this is the equation. This term can be written as 2hc gets cancels here. So in the sense this is a common term which gets cancels here. So remaining will be 1. You can just take it this term. You can write it as this can be written as lambda dash difference lambda naught into lambda dash into mc square. And what you left here is this term goes here, right? And take this term. You have common is hc by lambda naught lambda dash. Will after 2hc is getting cancelled, you will left with hc lambda naught lambda dash as a common here. So you have that is 1 here and cos theta here, minus cos theta here. So shift it to the other side, it will become 1 minus cos theta. So you have hc by lambda naught by lambda dash into 1 minus cos theta. So lambda naught lambda dash is again get cancelled. So what you get is lambda dash difference lambda naught is equal to hc by mc 1 minus cos theta. So this equation is called the Compton-Shift equation. So this equation is known as the Compton-Shift equation. I hope it is clear to you. So do anyone has a query in this? If there is no queries, we'll move on to the numerical. Hello, am I audible to you?
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay. I'll just have a recap of the derivation. So here we consider the collision of two particles, that is the photon and which electron is at rest. So after the collision of two particles, the photon will scattered in one particular direction with an angle theta, which is called the scattering angle, and electron will move at a particular angle phi, and it will move with the speed of ke. So if lambda naught, p naught, e naught are the wavelength momentum energy of the incident photon, lambda dash, p dash, and e dash is the wavelength momentum of the and energy of the scattered photon. So with this, you need to write the two equations. You have to set up the two equations, that is conservation of energy and conservation of momentum. So conservation of energy is, you know, that incident energy is equal to the scattered energy plus kinetic energy of the electron, and writing down the relativistic expression, substituting for k, you get E minus mc square, and then rewriting the equation and squaring it. So you will get that these two terms, m square c to the power of 4, get cancelled in order to determine the momentum of the scattered electron. So apply the conservation momentum. First, you write down the x component. So this can be written by resolving the vectors, resolving the vectors method. That is, take the momentum of the if you consider the electron and the photon resolved into two components. So you can see the momentum vector diagram shown over here. So if you resolve it into the two components, you can write down the x component of x component of the momentum, and similarly the y component momentum. So you will get this equation. In order to get the PE square and add the two equations. Once you get the value of PE, substitute in the equation which you have just arrived, and you will left with this equation. So once you have this equation, so what you can do is expand this left hand side term and look for the certain common terms. That is, for example, the red one and the green one get cancelled, and even in fact the 2hc is common, that is also get cancelled. Then you left with hc by lambda dash, lambda naught lambda dash, and you will get 1 minus cos theta on the one side, and you will get the lambda dash difference lambda naught mc square by lambda naught lambda dash, and again you will see that these two terms get cancelled. You will get the equation of that this equation known as the Compton shift equation, where lambda dash lambda naught is the scattered photons wavelength, incident photons wavelength. It's h by mc is known as Compton wavelength. Sometimes it is written as lambda e, and theta is called the scattering angle. I hope you have followed it. If anyone has a query, please go ahead with your query. So then we'll move on to the numerical. If anyone has a query, you can ask me. So solve this problem. You have a photon which is a 0.0016 nanometer scatters from a free electron. For what photon angle does the recoiling electron, which is having the kinetic energy equal to that of the scattered photon? So you need to determine the theta. Please do it. I'll give you 5 minutes time to review. Meanwhile, anyone has a query, please, you can ask me.
Sir, can you go to the last slide? I want to see one thing.
Yes.
Sir, can you go to the last slide?
The last slide.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Yes.
Now you anyone has got the answer? Yes, anyone has completed this numerical?
2 minutes.
Yes, how much?
2
What is the angle?
2 minutes.
Okay, okay, no problem.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So in the derivation, there was this one slide saying squaring and adding.
Yes,
Can you go back to that?
just a minute. Where? This one, square and add, momentum equations, right?
Yes, sir. So can you please explain that squaring and adding thing?
See, the thing is, a minute.
Get caught. Your entire
So suppose if you take p dash sin square theta plus cos square theta plus cos square phi plus sin square phi is 1, right?
Yes, sir.
So that is why you will get with this value. If you take this as p naught minus p dash square, so you will get p naught square p dash square cos square theta minus 2p naught p dash cos theta. Okay, so p dash square cos theta plus p dash square sin square theta. So if you add that, what will happen is sin square theta plus cos square theta is 1, you left with p dash square. Similarly, on the right side, cos square phi plus sin square phi will become is 1, so you left with pe square.
Okay, sir. Got it.
Okay, I
Thank
think
you, sir.
I didn't mention that. I thought you might have understood. That's why I didn't mention. So sin square theta plus cos square theta is equal to 1. That we have added upon. So that I did not write that particular equation. I presume that most you people may be knowing it. Anyway, so that's what is been taken here when we are squaring and adding it in this process. Okay.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Okay. I hope for this derivation, I would suggest if you do it on your own once, it will be easier for you. You need not to memorize. So what you do is, if you should know the conservation of energy and the conservation of momentum equation, if you know that, you can do it on your own. So you that looks a little lengthy, but it's simple. Okay. So no one has got the answer for this numerical. Yes. Say yes or no. If it is no, also no problem. We'll discuss that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, 70.1. Yeah, somebody has messaged me. Kushi Agarwal. Yes. Looks like. Let me check. Okay. So what is given here is one thing. So you need to see that the kinetic energy, that is the energy of the recoiling electron, is equal to the energy of the scattered photon. That is EE is equal to E dash. Now, you have incident energy is equal to scattered energy plus scattered energy of the electron is the equation you have. So this equation gives the relation as E naught is equal to 2E dash. Okay. Now, if energy and wavelengths are inversely proportional, in that case, lambda dash is twice lambda naught. Since E naught is twice E dash, so lambda dash will be twice lambda naught, since they are inversely proportional. Now, you have the equation lambda dash. So the same equation is written in the different form. Lambda dash difference lambda naught is equal to lambda c 1 minus cos it. That is the Compton wavelength. So we know what is lambda dash, right? From this equation, you can write it as 2 lambda naught. So since what is given was only the value of lambda naught, lambda dash was not given. So we need to interchange the value of lambda dash using the lambda naught. So that's what we have done here. you have 2 lambda naught is equal to lambda naught plus lambda c into 1 minus cos theta. So the angle is 70 degrees. So once you rewrite this equation and solve for it, you will get 70 degrees. I think Kushi Agarwal has mentioned it. Yes, you are right. You got the value of 70 degrees. So if you complete this problem 15, later on after the today's class, you can look for the problem numbers 13, 14, and 16 to work out. Okay, you can work out these problems, which is at the end of this chapter. Hope you have understood this numerical.
Yes, sir.
One thing this given is energy of the scattered photon and energy of the electron is same. So the energies is same. And another problem was they are not given the scattered photon wavelength. So what you have to do is you have to use the given data that the energies are the same. Using that, correlate with respect to wavelength and substitute what will be the scattered photon wavelength. The scattered photon wavelength will be twice that of the incident photon wavelength. And that condition you will see that these energies are same, and that will happen for the wavelength of angle of theta is equal to 70. That's what they are asking. For what photon
Sir, can you
scattering
give us
angle?
2 minutes?
Yeah, no problem. You can make a note of it. Please don't hesitate to ask me. If you need time, I will provide the time to make a note of it. Okay. I hope all of you have noted down. So then we will continue with the next. I hope things are fine with this problem.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So we'll continue with the next part in this chapter, photons and electromagnetic waves. So now you have studied by this time that light exhibits the diffraction interference phenomena, which can be explained if you take the wave picture into account, that is the wave property. And you have seen in the past 2 to 3 classes, that is photoelectric effect and the Compton effect. This can be explained only if you treat the light as a photon, that is the particle. So the diffraction interference exhibits can be explained using the wave nature. Photoelectric effect and Compton effect can be explained using the particle nature. So that means true nature of light is not describable in terms of any single classical picture. Instead, both wave and particle nature have to be considered. So in short, we can say that particle model and you have the wave model of light are complementary to each other. So we have been studying optics for almost like a couple of classes, and we have started with the quantum physics, where you started realizing the necessity of treating the light as a particle or light as a stream of particles, what you call it as a photons, right? So you can explain only by particle nature of light. Now, so with this, now comes the next step in quantum mechanics. If you see the evolution of quantum mechanics, many things was happening in the European zone, right? So most of the things were happening in the Europe, and you look for the year also carefully. So if you observe, there is something which was unstable at that point of time. Now here comes a person you can see who is well known as person is de Broglie. He is a French physicist. He made a groundbreaking contribution to the world of quantum. His thesis in the year 1924, which involves the wave nature of electrons, suggests that all matter has wave properties. So this concept is known as the de Broglie hypothesis, based on its postulate. An example of wave-particle duality is and forms the central part of quantum mechanics. Okay, so he's the one person who is responsible for the bringing the concept of matter waves, which you're going to study now in his dissertation in the year 1924. And in fact, he was awarded a Nobel Prize in the year 1929 after the wave-like behavior of matter was experimentally demonstrated. We will see, though, we will see how this matter, the wave-like behavior of matter was experimented at a later stage. So he was awarded Nobel Prize in Physics in 1929. So compare the year. His postulate, his thesis was in 1924, and in 1929, soon after it was demonstrated experimentally, he was awarded the Nobel Prize. In fact, if you see a little bit about him, so I was mentioning that look for the year, right? So it is a year where, if you see the evolution of quantum mechanics, I think it is in the early 19th century, and you will see that around the First World War was taking place in 1914, was taken place, and in fact, he offered his services to the army in the development of radio communications. In fact, he had an intended to have a career in humanities, and his first degree is in history. So then he turned towards his attention towards mathematics and physics, and received degree in physics. So this is the look at the years. It is in the early 90s where the evolution of quantum physics or mechanics is begin to start. So now let's look into that about the de Broglie. Now we will come into this hypothesis. So his hypothesis is about the wave properties of the particle. So what he means to say is, we have seen that light comes in discrete units. So when we say discrete units, photons, that is the particles which is having energy and momentum, which can be linked to wave-like properties, which are frequency and wavelength. And as I was mentioning, in 1923, around in 1923-1924, it's doctoral dissertation, Louis de Broglie postulated that because of the photons, just look into the year, maybe 23 or 24, I'll verify it later. So Louis de Broglie postulated because photons have both wave and particle characteristics, perhaps all forms of matter will have wave-like properties. This is what you need to his hypothesis about, and with the wavelength lambda related to p in the same way that of light. What is stated is, since now we have seen that photons have both the nature, that is, it has the wave nature as well as the particle nature. If that is the case, then any form of the matter, all the forms of matter should have the wave, or should have expected to have wave-like properties. So that's what he postulated, which is termed as matter waves. Any form of matter, if it exhibits the wave-like nature, we call that waves as the matter waves. So which having a wavelength lambda and p, which is similar to that of the particle. So his equation was the de Broglie wavelength was given by lambda is equal to h by p, where h is the Planck's constant, and here lambda refers to the de Broglie wavelength of the particle. Please note is of the particle, and p is the momentum of the particle similar to that of the wave. So we can write, if you want to write the frequency of the particle as f is equal to E by h, where E is the energy of the particle, f is the frequency of the particle. We have seen E is equal to hf, that is the quantum. There's a photon, right? Here one particle means one hf, two particles means two hf, like so on. So the energy quantum. So f is equal to E by h. So this concept of matter waves was put forward by de Broglie in earlier 1920s. So for a non-relativistic particle, so as I was mentioning, when we say relativistic particle, we talk about the speed of light. In generally we'll be talking about most of the things which we'll be talking about is a non-relativistic case. When we say relativistic, it will be moving at the speed of light. You will have a relativistic factor here. So this is a non-relativistic equation. In that case, we can write the momentum as p is equal to mv. So we can write lambda is equal to h by p as m. This is another form. When a particle is moving at a non-relativistic speed, we can write the equation as lambda is equal to h by v, and the particle, and v is the velocity of the particle. And now you have the, suppose we take electron as it is a particle. It is subjected to an acceleration in a potential of delta v, and as a non-relativistic kinetic energy. So in that case, we can write half mv square is equal to E delta v, where delta v is the potential where the electron is being accelerated. And we can write this, if you have mv is known as p, so where this equation multiply divided by m, so we can write this as p square. So we have p square by 2m is equal to E delta v, or we can write p is equal to square root of me delta v. So the de Broglie equation can be rewritten in terms of h by square root of 2 mev delta v. So these are these two equations are the different forms of the de Broglie hypothesis, which is lambda is equal to h by p, or lambda is equal to h by mv, or lambda is equal to h by square root of 2 mev delta v. This is the different forms of the same equation. Okay. Now I will be asking you a question to you all. So as de Broglie was stated, perhaps any form of matter will be able to see the we should exhibit the wave nature. If that is the case, why don't we see the wave properties of baseball? Can anyone tell me? Yes,
Sir, because the speed of baseball is not as
take non-relative
sir, because the
case.
speed of baseball is
Mass
not
is very
comparable. Yes, sir, non-relative.
Yes,
mass is very large.
mass is very large.
So the lambda value, I mean, for calculate the de Broglie wavelength is very small. It's negligible.
De Broglie wavelength is very small. Okay, negligible. So an object, yes, what one of you, I think I forgot who mentioning. Yeah, somebody was mentioning about the wavelength. It is the wavelength we need to look into that. So an object will appear wave-like if it exhibits interference diffraction, right? Of which require the scattering object or the aperture about the same size as the wavelength. Suppose if you take the baseball, let us say 140-gram baseball traveling at 60 miles per hour, which has a wavelength, de Broglie wavelength is given by 1.7 10 raised to minus 34. Now, so this wavelength is too small, right? What should be the size of the aperture? It should be comparable to it. Can we observe the pattern using this wavelength? Can anyone?
No, sir, we can't.
Why?
No, sir.
Why? Because even if you take a nucleus, its size is
Sir,
1
if
Fermi.
we put this value in,
Yes, you need to have an aperture or a grating or any other
Yes.
object which should be of the order of minus 34 meters. If you take the nucleus, that also adds 10 to the power of minus 50 meters, which is much too large. Okay, so that means in this current scenario, I'm talking about the current scenario, even the nucleus is too large to diffract this incredibly small wavelength. So that is why we don't see the wave properties of baseball, but like de Broglie mentioned, it do exhibit the wave nature, and its wavelength can be estimated using its equation postulated by him. So there is a lot of things are we can't be experimentally verify this. This is what the things was going in the earlier stages. Yes, there were a couple of experiments came into the picture done by some few scientists, and which proved and that his hypothesis was true and it could be verifiable. So that is the two experiments which was verifiable was the Davison-Germer experiment and G.P. Thompson's experiment. Okay, so these two experiments confirmed the de Broglie hypothesis, that is lambda is equal to h by p. Subsequently, it was found that atomic beams and beams of neutrons also exhibits the diffraction. Thus, de Broglie formula is it can be applied to any kind of matter. Okay, so it can be applied to any kind of matter. Now, at this scenario, the dual nature of matter and radiation is an accepted fact, and it is stated in the principle of complementarity that wave and particle properties of either matter or radiation are complement to each other. Okay, so if you know G.P. Thomson, in fact, G.P. Thomson is the son of the physicist and the Nobel laureate J.J. Thomson. Okay, he's the same person. He is son of the Nobel laureate J.J. Thomson. Okay, so I'll put the entire thing in one picture. You can see here the Davison and Germer who proved verified the de Broglie hypothesis. Separately, G.P. Thomson was doing an electron diffraction experiment using some other experiments. He was doing observing some patterns, and Davison and Germer did an experiment. So these two, in fact, shared the Nobel Prize. There is Davison and G.P. Thomson, not the Germer. Okay, in the year 1937, and de Broglie, as you know, as mentioned earlier, he was awarded Nobel Prize for his hypothesis in the year 1929, and Arthur Compton was awarded Nobel Prize in the year 1927. Okay, so Davison shared the Nobel Prize with G.P. Thomson, who independently discovered electron diffraction at about the same time as Davison was doing. So there are two different experiments, but both discovered the electron diffraction, because electron is a particle which is exhibiting the wave nature, that is the diffraction. When we say wave nature, a particle exhibiting the wave nature, that is either it should exhibit the diffraction or the interference. Okay. I hope it is clear to you. The de Broglie hypothesis is clear to you all.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So
Yes,
then we
sir.
move on to the numericals. We have two numericals before starting the next unit. So I solve the two problems. We have an electron whose kinetic energy is 3 electron volts. Please determine its wavelength, also the wavelength of the photon having same energy. What is the answer for part A, the wavelength? Anyone has computed the wavelength? Anyone could determine the wavelength? Yes? None of you have done.
Sir,
Yes?
so 8.99 into 8.99 into 10 power minus 16 meters.
15 meters. No. It is around 0.709 nanometer. I think you might have, taking the energy, you might have not taken 1.6 10 raised to minus 90. Maybe something you might have missed. Please check it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I didn't take 1.6.
Yeah, Arnab and I think Arnab Mehra. So now for the photon, so what he's telling is, you also determine the wavelength of the photon. Suppose if it has the same energy, what would be the wavelength of the photon? So this is 413 nanometer. I think Kushi. Let me check Kushi. Anyone got the same answer? Yeah, 414 nanometers. That's true. That's fine. So if you have not got the same answer, so check the calculation and solve the problems 17, 18, and 19, which is given at the end of the chapter. Okay. (17, 18, 19), which are related to probably related to de Broglie hypothesis.
Sir,
Hope you are
previous
finished.
slide. No.
Note down the formula and the answer. You can verify it later. If you've gone wrong somewhere, check for your calculation. Okay. I hope all of you are maintaining a notebook where you are writing it down, the solution for all these problems at one page, right? And I hope you are solving
Yes.
the other problems too. So if you have maintained a separate notebook for the, at least for the tutorials, it would be easier for you people to work out and revise at the later stages. So you need not to turn the pages here and there for looking into these problems. I advise that you look into the problems which I am mentioning, which is not done in the class, needs to be done by you at the same day, not on at some other day. So that makes you this topic more familiar and easier for you to understand much better. If you have completed, we'll have one more problem and then move further. So note down the answers. It is 0.0709 nanometer and 414 nanometer. If it is for an electron and for a photon. In fact, that's what if you see in the Davis and Germer experiment, it will be able to verify the if lambda is equal to h by p. If you estimate the wavelength of the electron using that equation, and also determine the wavelength using that experiment. It came to be same. That's how the hypothesis was validated. Okay. So it is the same experiment. So we have Davison-Kermer experiment. In that experiment, we know that the electron beams were shined upon the nickel crystal, which has proper arrangement of atoms. When you say the crystal, there is a proper arrangement of atoms, and then they look for the scattered electrons which form the diffraction pattern. In this case, the 54 EV electrons were diffracted from the nickel lattice. They noted the diffraction pattern at phi is equal to 50 degrees. So what was the lattice spacing A between the two vertical rows? So you have lambda is equal to h by 2 MeV. And using this, you can determine the wavelength. And now you determine the lattice spacing. Please do this. What equation you have to use here to determine the lattice spacing A? D is the interplanar distance, that is the distance between the two planes. A is the interatomic spacing. Atomic spacing and planar spacing is different, okay? It's not the same. Yes, can anyone tell me what equation we need to use here to determine A? Yes?
Sir, 2D sine theta.
Yes, 2D sine theta. But please note, I am not using theta here. What you
Equal
are saying,
to
right? Yeah, m lambda. So I am using A sine phi. Please
phi.
note, using the grating equation, it says A sine phi. If you can also use 2D sine theta, but when we say 2D sine theta, theta refers to the angle made by the incoming electron beam with respect to the plane, right? So we are not talking about the angle theta
Yes, sir.
with respect to the plane. So phi is the angle made by the electron beam with respect to the surface, but the scattered electrons. We are just taking about this. With respect to the surface, we are mentioning, not with respect to the plane. So both in some textbooks they might have used 2D sine theta is equal to m lambda. Some textbooks they might have written A sine phi is equal to m lambda. Both are right. In that case, if you are using 2D, in that case you need to work for the angle theta. So in this we need basically the A. So I will use this equation. A sine phi is equal to m lambda. The angle I am taking here is phi. So using the de Broglie, you get the wavelength of the electron as 1.67 angstrom. This 1.6 10 to minus 10 meters. So that's what how one could verify it. So if you put it in this equation and check, you will get 1.67 angstrom, and you measure experimentally, you will get the same value. That's how the hypothesis was validated. In fact, please note, this experiment was not for validating the de Broglie hypothesis. They were trying the diffraction experiment of electrons, and while doing it, this experiment was to study the electron beam diffraction. Okay, but in fact, it came down to be true with what was by de Broglie. Here m is 1 and phi is 50 degree, which is given in the problem. So you get how much? The value of A is yes. Anyone has estimated the value of A?
Sir, 2.18 into 10 power minus 10.
Okay, that's true. Yeah, 0.2 nanometer. So please note, we are generally talking about the interatomic spacing. you should know it will be in the few angstroms or few nanometers. It's around 0.2 nanometer. We all know that they are very closely spaced. The atoms are closely spaced. Okay. Please make a note of it. If you have not got the same answer, just check your calculations and the assumptions which you have made in solving this problem. Now you can make a note of the answer A as 0.218 nanometer. Okay. I hope all of you have noted down or solved this problem. If you are unable to solve, if something went wrong, just check the values which are substituted on the equation and redo it. Note down the answer, that is 0.218 nanometer. Okay, if you have any queries, you feel free to ask now. Otherwise, we'll move to the next topic. Okay. So we'll move on to the next topic, that is the quantum particle. So now we are almost nearing to the end of this chapter. Maybe in one more class we'll be completing it. So I advise all of you to look into the fundamentals from the beginning of quantum physics. So as we will be having live quizzes starting from 1st December. I repeat it, you will be having live quizzes from the 1st December for 2 marks during the class, every class session. Okay, so we'll see quantum particle. See, the quantum particle is a model, okay, it's a mathematical model in which the particles which is having the dual nature, that is the particle which has exhibiting the particle nature as well as the, in a sense, the wave nature are represented. So one has to be careful, in the sense we must choose such a way that one appropriate behavior for quantum particle in order to understand a particular phenomena. That is, either a particle nature or a wave nature needs to be chosen to explain a particular phenomenon, which you have just seen that, for example, in diffraction you use the wave nature. The moment when you come to the photoelectric, you use particle nature. We should choose an appropriate behavior of the particle, quantum particle, to understand a particular phenomena which is taking place. So, to represent the quantum particle, we need to combine the features. What are the features? The features of the particle and features of the wave. So we all know that particle has some features, wave has some features. So when you're talking about a particle, we just talk about an ideal particle and an ideal wave. So it is essential to combine the features of the ideal particle and an ideal wave. What are the features of wave and particle? For instance, if you take the particle, the essential feature is the localized in space. When I say a particle, we can say the particle is in this particular position, that is in space, in a region of space. That is the feature of the particle. Now, if you take an ideal wave, it is not localized. It's exactly opposite. That is, it's an infinitely long train wavetrain. You can just show over here. So in this case, you can't localize. It's a non-localized behavior. So one way, the challenge here is to put both the features into one using a model called a quantum particle. A quantum particle is a model where both the particle feature as well as the wave feature is taken into account. So that's the thing what we need to look for. So one is, what is the essential feature of an ideal particle? That is localized in space. And if you take the essential feature of an ideal wave, it is infinitely long, that is non-localized. So that is the challenge. You have to put combine both these features, what is the localized and unlocalized one, into one entity and represented by a model called a quantum particle. This is a model. This can be done by building the localized entity from infinitely long waves. Okay, what we do is waves of same amplitude, but they'll be varying with slightly different frequencies. So this model can be built to a localized entity choosing long wave trains. So these wave trains have same amplitude, but they'll be varying in frequencies, and they are superimposed. So the resultant of superposition of two such waves, you can see here, we are taking the two waves and of same wavelength, but of slightly different frequencies are superimposed. You get something of this nature. You can just observe this. This is the localized nature. You can say somewhere this is the localized nature, which what we call it as a wave packet. So we can say that a particle is present in this region, and also we are able to explain the wave nature of the particle. So both the entities, what is required here is, that is, essential feature of a particle is localized nature, and the essential feature of the wave is a long wave train, that is non-localized. So both, that is, this tells you the particle is somewhere in this region. This is called the wave packet, and this is a wave. Now, this is only in just taking two waves, two long waves of same amplitude and slightly different frequencies. Now, if you do that with large number of waves, that is, if you add a large number of waves in a similar way what we have done in the previous case, you will get a small region, so of localized region, where you can see that constructive interference is taking place, and this is called the wave packet, which represents the particle. So using this wave packet, this can be used to represent the particle. So large wave, this for to get this particular image or the form, you need to add large number of waves of slightly varying frequency. This we call it as a wave, resultant we call it as a wave packet, and it represents the particle. Okay. You can see here, so that's what been shown. So we have the different waves which are being put together, combined to form a wave packet. So you may be wondering, what is a wave packet? So wave packet is the resultant of superposition of group of waves of slightly varying frequencies. So this wave packet as an extension in the space only where the particle is found. So that means if I say this is the region, so the particle is found somewhere in this region. It is particle means localized space. So the particle is within this region. Beyond this particle is not present. So wherever this wave packet is there, the entity is there, it symbolizes the localized nature. So the particle is between this within this packet or somewhere in this region. So this region, the particle can be found. Okay. So mathematical representation of a wave packet can be represented if we take the two equations, let us, for simplicity, we are just taking two waves. Y1 is equal to a cos k1x difference minus omega 1 into t, and k2 omega 2 k2x minus omega 2 into t. So then, to find the resultant, what you have is this equation, and you have this is the amplitude term of the resultant when, and you can, this is given over here, and you can see this is the wave packet. Okay, so this is the this will be the form of the wave packet. Okay, so the wave packet will be moving. Okay, we can continue with this. So this is called the wave packet. So I can say that the particle is somewhere localized in this region. Okay, so there are two things which you need to learn now. One is called the group speed, and another one is called the phase speed. So there are two speeds which we need to look at here. One is the group speed, another is the phase speed. So phase speed talks about the waves, the individual waves moving in the wave packet. That is, if you talk about the phase speed, we are talking about the speed of the individual waves moving in the wave packet. And group speed, when we are talking about the speed of the wave packet itself. Okay, so the speed at which the individual waves are moving is called the phase speed, and the speed at which the entire wave packet is moving is known as the group speed. Please note, phase speed and group speed is not the same. They are different. So the phase speed is speed of the individual waves in a wave packet is moving, and the wave group speed is nothing but the speed at which the wave packet is propagating. And please note, the speed of the wave packet is nothing but the speed of the particle itself. So particle speed, we can represent it by the speed of the wave particle, the wave packet itself. Okay, so please note, once again I'll repeat. So quantum particle is a model brought in to combine the essential features of the ideal particle and the wave. So essential feature of the particle is the localized nature, and the essential feature of the wave is unlocalized. That is, you can see here, it is not a local, it's an infinitely long wave time. So both needs to be combined. For doing it, so we can do that by building a localized entity, because which is required for the particle to exhibit the particle nature. So for this, consider infinitely long waves of same amplitude but of slightly different frequency. You superimpose them. So what you get is a wave packet. Now, so if you do that with large number of waves, so you will have a small localized region of where construct interference is taking place, which we term it as a wave packet. So which can be represented, which can represent the particle. So wave packet is used to represent, please note, the wave packet is used to represent a particle. So I can say that in this localized region, the particle somewhere is present here. If you take a wave, I can't say that. If you take an infinitely long wave, I can't say where the particle is present. That's the unlocalized nature. So both features can be put into together using the concept of wave packet, using the quantum model. So this is the wave packet, which was built by adding the waves of slightly varying frequency, but of same amplitude. So the wave packet is an extension of space only in the region where the particle will be found. So if the wave packet is not there, means the particle is not present. Only where the particle is found in the region, in that region, you will have the wave packet. So here there are two speeds which needs to be explained, as I was mentioning, phase speed and the group speed. The phase speed is the one at which the individual waves in the wave packet is moving. So the speed at which these waves is talking about these waves will be, each wave will be moving with different speed. So the speed at which these individual waves are moving is called the phase speed. The speed at which the entire entity, that is the wave packet, is moving is called the group speed. So both are not the same. Phase speed and group speed is not the same. Group speed is nothing but the speed of the wave packet itself. That is, since we use a wave packet to represent the particle, the group speed is nothing but the speed of the particle. Okay, so we can write Vp is equal to F lambda or Vp is equal to omega by K. So we can write in this case as group speed is equal to delta omega by delta K. Now we will see the relationship between the phase speed and the group speed. If you see here that this equation gives you the relation that the phase speed and group speed is not the same. Whereas if you take the next relation, you will see here that group speed and the particle speed is one and the same. So first we'll take the group speed and the phase speed. So we define the phase speed as omega by K, right? So you know omega can be written as KVP. So we have K is equal to 2 pi by lambda. Differentiate this with respect to lambda and you get this equation over here. And we know what is Vg. So Vp is omega by K, then Vg is d omega by K. So substituting K in terms of lambda, what you get is this is the equation. So we can say that the group speed and phase speed is not one and the same. They are different. So the relationship between the two is Vg is equal to Vp minus lambda into delta Vp by delta lambda. And now the next is, what is the relationship between the group speed and the particle speed? Are both the same or different? So we know the relations omega is equal to 2 pi f, and we also know what is K. So we have Vg is equal to d omega by dk, and differentiate with respect to dE and this with dP. So you get what you call it. What you have is Vg is equal to dE by dP, and we know that the energy of classical particle moving with speed u, then the kinetic energy is given by half mu square. I've taken it as u so that we can differentiate the speed v. Okay, since we are using v, I've just taken it as u. So Vg is the group speed, Vp is the phase speed, and u is the speed at which the particle is moving. You have just E is equal to p square by 2m, and you have dE by dP as p by m, right? So substitute Vg is equal to d omega by dk, and what you get is dE by dP, so which is nothing but u. So which is nothing but p is equal to mv, right? So which is of the same form. So you are getting Vg is equal to u. That is, the group speed and the particle speed is the same. That is, group speed is represents the speed at which the wave packet is moving. That is the particle itself. Okay. So group speed and the particle speed is one and the same, whereas group speed and phase speed are not the same. Phase speed is the speed of the individual waves are moving. Group speed is the speed at which the wave packet is propagating. It is same as the particle speed. Anyone has a query in this? Hello? Please feel free to ask me if you have any query in this part, in this topic. Yes?
No, sir. No doubt.
Okay. If you have no queries, what we will do is
Next question.
we will continue in the next session. Before that, observe one video which I'll be playing for 5 minutes. Okay, I will take out the slides, and I'll play one video which is of the next class which you are going to see. Observe this. After this video, you can leave, and others you have any query can stay back. I'm repeating it again. I'll be playing the video. Now in a minute, which is pertaining to the next experiment, that is electron diffraction experiment. Just a minute. This
Sir, have you taken the attendance?
I will take the attendance after the video. Okay.
Okay, okay.
So the double slit experiment revisited. So this is what we are going to study in the next class. That is the coming Wednesday's class. Pertaining to it, I have a 5 minutes video explaining the things. So if you recall my first class, which I took, where I was talking about the double slit experiment, I was talking to you that this will be coming again and again in the different forms. You saw again the double slit experiment in diffraction also. Now we will be doing the same experiment, but with using electron beam. So observe this video for a while, for 5 minutes. Then we will discuss this in the next class. Okay, I'll share the video. Just wait for a minute. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Granddaddy of all quantum weirdness, the infamous double slit experiment. Particles or little balls of matter act. If we randomly shoot a small object, say a marble, at the screen, we see a pattern on the back wall where they went through the slit and hit. Now, if we add a second slit, we would expect to see a second band duplicated to the right. Now, let's look at waves. The waves hit the slit and radiate out, striking the back wall with the most intensity directly in line with the slit. The line of brightness on the back screen shows that intensity. This is similar to the line the marbles make. But when we add the second slit, something different happens. If the top of another wave, they cancel each other out. So now there is an interference pattern on the back wall. Places where the two tops meet are the highest intensity, the bright lines, and where they cancel, there is nothing. So, when we throw things, that is, matter, through two slits, we get this, two bands of hits. And with waves, we get an interference pattern of many bands. Good so far. Now, let's go quantum. An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. Let's fire a stream through one slit. It behaves just like the marble, a single band. So, if we shoot these tiny bits through two slits, we should get, like the marbles, two bands. What? An interference pattern. We fired electrons, tiny bits of matter through. But we get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles. How? How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. But physicists are clever. They thought, maybe those little balls are bouncing off each other and creating that pattern. So, they decide to shoot electrons through one at a time. There is no way they could interfere with each other. But after an hour of this, the same interference pattern is seen to emerge. The conclusion is inescapable. The single electron leaves as a particle, becomes a wave of potentials, goes through both slits, and interferes with itself to hit the wall like a particle. But mathematically, it's even stranger. It goes through both slits, and it goes through neither. And it goes through just one, and it goes through just the other. All of these possibilities are in superposition with each other. But physicists were completely baffled by this. So they decided to peek and see which slit it actually goes through. They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of 2 bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched. And it was here that physicists stepped forever into the strange netherworld of quantum events. What is matter? Marbles or waves? And waves of what? And what does an observer have to do with any of this? The observer collapsed the wave function simply by observing. And here we are, the grand...
Okay. I think you have seen the video, right?
Yes,
So,
sir.
So the same experiment we will be discussing in the next session. You just saw that when the experiment was done with the marbles, they observed the 2 bands, but when it was repeated using the electrons, they noticed the interference pattern. So the picture was entirely different when you detector of the observer, it collapsed the wave function, and again it behaves like what the pattern was given by the marble. So we will electron in the experiment of electron diffraction experiment, double slit experiment using the electron beam. So this experiment also supports the particle nature, wave nature of the particle, right, as stated by de Broglie. So we will see in the next class. So I think by the next class I'll be finishing the quantum physics, probably after quantum physics. So Dr. Bhagesh will be taking over from the next, not from the next coming class, after that. So there may be next Saturday from Dr. Bhagesh will be taking over to the engineering physics for the next half of it. Okay. So we'll be continuing. I think, sorry, there was a disturbance, the disconnectivity. Yeah. So we'll be continuing this electron double slit experiment revisited, as well as the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. With that, the quantum physics will be completed. That means we can say roughly you are halfway through the course. I can say that you are almost halfway through the engineering physics course. And now onwards, as I'm mentioning, the December 1st onwards, every engineering physics class will have a quiz for 2 marks. Please note, you will have a quiz for 2 marks in between the sessions. So please be attentive and good luck to you all. Okay, those who have query can stay back, and those who have doesn't have a query, they can leave. I have already noted the attendance. Thank you one and all for joining. Have a nice weekend. Good day.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
I
sir.
hope,
Thank you, sir.
yeah, thank you. I hope you are following physics, and anyone has a query can stay back, or any things to be clarified. Thank you very much, Arvind. So I'll stop the recording. Yes.